Commander Harris sat alone in the silent room. The war was finally over. For 40 years he had fought battles across planets, facing alien fleets, strange weapons, and endless bloodshed. His body carried scars, his mind carried ghosts, but his heart was calm. He had done his duty. Humanity was safe, at least for now. The High Council had called him to the chamber that day. The marble walls glowed under white light, and the banners of Earth's colonies hung above his head. The counselors wore long silver robes, their faces hard but respectful. Harris stood before them, tall and weathered, a soldier who had given his entire life to war. One of the counselors, an old man with gray eyes, spoke in a deep voice. "Commander Harris, you have served with honor. You have given more than we asked, more than we deserved. By ancient tradition, a warrior of your rank may choose one gift for his retirement. Ask and it will be granted." The hall was quiet. Everyone expected Harris to ask for land, for riches, maybe even a seat on the council. Many thought he might ask for a fleet of his own. But Harris stayed silent for a moment, his eyes distant. He remembered the long, cold nights in space, the empty bunk beside him, the loneliness that no victory could cure. Finally, his voice broke the silence. "I want one thing. Send me an alien woman." The council chamber exploded with whispers and laughter. Some thought he was joking. Some thought the great commander had finally gone mad. An alien woman? Not money, not power, not a palace? The old man raised his hand to silence the noise. "Explain yourself, Commander." Harris looked straight at him. His voice was steady. "All my life I fought aliens. I killed them, studied them, destroyed them. But I never understood them. I want one woman, not as a prisoner, not as an enemy, but as a companion. I want to see if peace is truly possible, if two different worlds can share one home." The council stared at him in shock. Then the old man nodded slowly. "Very well, it will be done." Word of his strange request spread quickly through the colonies. Soldiers joked about it, calling him a lonely old man. Politicians whispered that Harris was planning something dangerous. But the decision was final. A retirement gift was a sacred right. Weeks passed. Harris returned to his quiet house on the edge of the colony. It was a small place, far from the crowded cities, built near the forest and the river. He spent his days fishing, polishing old metals, and waiting. For the first time in his life, Harris had nothing to do but think. Sometimes he wondered if he had made a mistake. What if the alien woman hated him? What if she tried to kill him in his sleep? What if the council had only agreed to test him, to see if he would fail? But Harris did not change his request. He was a soldier. He had faced death countless times. He could face one alien woman. One night the sound of engines woke him. The ground shook as a small transport ship landed near his house. The lights of the craft cut through the dark forest. Harris stood on his porch, his old uniform jacket over his shoulders, his hand resting on the pistol at his belt. The ship's door opened with a hiss. Two shadows appeared inside. Harris narrowed his eyes. He expected one woman. He counted two. They stepped into the light. Both were tall, both had pale skin that glowed faintly, and both wore long robes of dark blue. Their eyes were bright and strange, shining like silver glass. One of them looked calm, almost gentle. The other stood stiff and silent, her gaze sharp and cold. Harris's heart beat faster. This was not what he asked for. He muttered under his breath. "Two of them?" "Why?" The calm one spoke first, her voice soft like music. "Commander Harris." She said his name as if she had known it all her life. The cold one said nothing. She only stared at him, her silver eyes unblinking, her face unreadable. Harris felt a chill run through him. He had fought monsters, machines, and entire alien armies. But this was different. This was not war. This was personal. And something inside him told him that this was only the beginning. He stepped back toward his house, his hand never leaving his pistol. He had asked for one alien woman as a gift. The council had sent him two, and deep in his chest he felt a heavy question. Was this a mistake? Or a trap? The two alien women stood at the edge of the porch, the ship's lights fading behind them. Commander Harris had faced many enemies in his life, but never had he felt this kind of tension. Two sets of silver eyes were watching him, one calm, one sharp, both unreadable. He cleared his throat. "I was told there would be one of you." The calm woman tilted her head. "And yet there are two." Her tone was soft, almost playful. The silent one didn't move. Her arms were crossed, her gaze locked on Harris as if she were studying him, measuring his strength. Harris stepped aside and gestured toward the house. "Come in, we'll talk inside." The women entered without a sound. Their movements were smooth, graceful, almost too perfect. Harris noticed how their feet made no noise on the wooden floor, as if they were trained to erase their presence. His soldier's instincts sharpened. These were not ordinary companions. The calm one looked around the living room with interest. She ran her fingers across the old wooden table, examined the rows of medals on the shelf, and smiled faintly at the photographs of young soldiers. "You have lived a long life of war," she said gently. Harris said nothing. He poured himself a drink, sat down, and kept his eyes on both of them. The cold one finally spoke, her voice flat and precise. "Why did you ask for one of us?" Harris sipped his drink slowly. "Because I spent my life fighting your kind. I wanted to see if I could live with one of you. Maybe understand you. Maybe find peace." The calm one smiled again. "Then perhaps peace has already begun." But the cold one narrowed her eyes. "Or perhaps you asked for the wrong thing." The air grew heavy. Harris leaned back in his chair, watching them carefully. He could feel it. These two were connected in some way. Not sisters, not twins, but something else. He broke the silence. "What are your names?" The calm one spoke first. "I am Lyra." The cold one hesitated before answering. "I am Celine." Harris repeated their names quietly, committing them to memory. Lyra, the gentle one. Celine, the silent blade. Lyra moved closer, her silver eyes soft. "Do you regret your choice, Commander?" Harris shook his head. "I regret nothing. But I didn't ask for two. So tell me, why are there two of you?" Neither answered. Lyra looked down, almost shy. Celine crossed her arms again and stared at him with unblinking eyes. The silence stretched until Harris stood up. His voice grew harder. "Listen to me. I fought empires, fleets, and creatures far worse than you can imagine. I know when something is wrong. If the Council sent me two of you, there's a reason. And I intend to find out." Lyra's gentle voice broke the tension. "Not everything must begin with suspicion, Commander. Sometimes the reason is simple." Harris frowned. "And what's the simple reason?" Lyra smiled faintly. "You asked for one. But perhaps the Council wanted to test you with two." Her words unsettled him. A test, yes, that sounded like the Council. They never did anything without a hidden purpose. As the night deepened, Harris prepared rooms for them. Lyra thanked him softly. Celine simply nodded and walked into her room without a word. Later, as Harris sat alone by the fireplace, he heard something. A whisper. He froze. It wasn't English, and it wasn't any alien language he knew. The sound was strange, more like static signals layered with hidden rhythm. He rose quietly and moved toward the hallway. Through the thin walls, he heard Lyra and Celine speaking in that strange coded tongue. Their voices were low but urgent, like two people exchanging secrets. Harris leaned against the wall, his jaw tight. He couldn't understand the words, but he understood the danger. This was no ordinary talk. It sounded like instructions, like strategy. For a moment he considered bursting into the room, pistol in hand, but then he stopped. A soldier doesn't charge without knowing the battlefield. He stepped back, returning to his chair by the fire. He would wait, watch, learn. An hour later, Lyra entered the room quietly. She found him awake, staring into the flames. Her silver eyes shone in the firelight. "You do not trust us," she said softly. Harris looked at her. "Trust must be earned." Lyra smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Then let us earn it." She turned and walked away, leaving Harris with more questions than answers. The fire crackled, shadows danced across the walls, and Harris felt the weight of unseen forces pressing in on him. He had asked for one alien woman as a gift, hoping for peace. Now he had two, and both carried secrets. As the night stretched on, Harris whispered to himself, "This is not retirement. This is the beginning of something else." The first days passed quietly, or at least that was how it seemed on the surface. Commander Harris woke early each morning as he always had, his soldier's habits too deep to break. He brewed strong coffee, walked the edge of the river near his house, and returned to find the two alien women already awake. Lyra, the gentle one, often watched the sunrise from the porch. Her silver eyes softened when the light touched them, and sometimes she even smiled. Celine, the cold one, trained in silence. Harris saw her move through patterns with her hands, sharp and exact, like a soldier practicing drills. She was fast, too fast for human eyes to follow. At first, Harris said nothing. He simply observed, but the longer they stayed, the stronger his unease grew. One night, after long hours of silence, Harris decided to test them. He left his bedroom door half open and stayed awake, pretending to sleep. The house was dark, the forest outside alive with distant animal calls. Hours passed. Midnight came. Then he heard it, the whispering. It wasn't English. It wasn't any alien language he had ever studied during the war. The sound was strange, almost mechanical. A soft series of pulses broken by tones and clicks. To Harris, it sounded less like speech and more like coded transmissions. He moved silently, every step practiced from years of combat. The voices came from the guest rooms. He crouched outside, his ear close to the wall. Inside, Lyra and Celine spoke quickly in that strange signal language. Lyra's tone was low and pleading, Celine's sharper like the edge of a blade. For a moment, Harris's hand hovered over the pistol at his side. He imagined bursting through the door, demanding answers, forcing the truth out of them, but his instincts held him back. A soldier doesn't reveal himself until he understands the battlefield. He stepped away and returned to his chair by the fire, his mind racing. Why are they here? Who sent them? And why two? The next morning, Harris acted normal. He brewed his coffee, sat at the table, and waited. Lyra entered first, her face calm, almost too calm. "Did you sleep well, Commander?" she asked gently. Harris studied her, his expression unreadable. "Well enough." Celine came next, silent as always. She sat across from him, her eyes locked on his, unblinking. It was a stare of challenge, like one soldier testing another. "Tell me something," Harris said suddenly. "What were you two talking about last night?" Lyra's eyes flickered just for a second. Then she smiled faintly. "We share memories. It comforts us." Celine said nothing. She only kept staring, her jaw set, her body perfectly still. Harris leaned forward. "That didn't sound like memories. That sounded like signals." The room went quiet. For a long moment, only the ticking of the old clock filled the space. Lyra's smile did not fade, but it no longer reached her eyes. "You have sharp ears." "Commander." Harris's hand rested casually on the table, but every muscle in his body was ready to move. "And you both have sharp secrets," he replied. Celine finally spoke, her voice cold and precise. "You are not ready for our truth." Harris's eyes narrowed. "Then make me ready," but neither of them answered. Lyra lowered her gaze and Celine leaned back, her face a mask of stone. The silence was louder than words. That night, Harris made a decision. If they would not speak, he would watch. He set traps. Small threads across doorways, subtle marks in the dust near windows. The kind of tricks only a soldier would notice. And the next morning, every single trap was untouched. No broken thread, no mark disturbed. Yet Harris knew they had moved. He could feel it in the air, the same way he used to sense ambushes in enemy territory. By the third night, the whispers returned. This time, Harris crept outside. Through a thin crack in the curtain, he saw them. Lyra stood near the window, her hands glowing faintly as if light lived beneath her skin. Celine stood opposite her, her posture tense, her arms folded. The coded whispers filled the room, faster, sharper. Then suddenly Celine turned her head. Her silver eyes locked directly on the curtain. On Harris, Harris froze, his heartbeat steady but strong. For a moment, no one moved. Then Celine spoke a single word, sharp, metallic in that strange tongue. Lyra's glow faded. The whispers stopped. Both women stared at the curtain in silence. Harris stepped back, his jaw tight. He returned to his chair by the fire, waiting. But they did not come out. When dawn broke, the two appeared at the table as if nothing had happened. Lyra smiled softly. Celine remained stone-faced. Harris said nothing. He only watched them both, every muscle coiled like a spring. Inside his mind, the truth grew clearer. These women were not gifts. They were something else. Something hidden. Something dangerous. And though Harris did not show it, a single thought burned in his mind. This is not a gift. This is a mission. Days turned into weeks, but the tension in Harris's house never softened. If anything, it grew sharper, like a blade being honed in silence. Lyra tried to fill the space with warmth. She cooked simple meals from human food, though she moved strangely in the kitchen, as if mimicking something she had only studied. She asked Harris questions about Earth, about his battles, about the stars he had seen. Her silver eyes often softened when she looked at him, almost too gentle, like she wanted him to trust her. Celine, on the other hand, remained a shadow. She spoke little, her words clipped and precise. She moved with a soldier's control, her back always straight, her eyes always scanning. Harris recognized that look. It was the gaze of someone who calculated threats in every corner of a room. At first, Harris thought they were two opposites, one gentle, one dangerous. But slowly he began to notice something unsettling. Lyra and Selene were not different in the way humans were different. Their movements carried the same rhythm, their voices had the same undertone. It was like they were fragments of the same design. Harris didn't like the thought. One evening he sat on the porch polishing an old rifle. The forest stretched out in front of him, dark and quiet. Lyra joined him, sitting close. "You spend too much time with your weapons," she said softly. Harris didn't look at her. "They've kept me alive longer than most men." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "And now?" "The war's finished. Do you still need them?" Harris finally met her eyes. They glowed faintly in the starlight, reflecting more than human eyes ever could. Peace doesn't erase danger. It only hides it. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lyra placed her hand gently on his arm. Her skin was cool, almost unnaturally smooth. Harris's body stiffened, his instincts warning him. Yet part of him felt something he had not felt in years. An ache of closeness. A hunger for connection. But before he could speak, Celine's voice cut through the silence. "You shouldn't touch him," they both turned. Selene stood at the doorway, her eyes sharp, her body tense like a drawn bow. Lyra did not move her hand. "Why not?" she asked calmly. Celine's jaw tightened. "Because he doesn't trust us. And he shouldn't." The words hung in the air like a blade between them. Harris slowly pulled his arm free, setting the rifle aside. "Enough," he said firmly. "If you've come here to fight each other, take it outside. My house is no battlefield." Lyra lowered her gaze, withdrawing her hand. Selene stepped back into the shadows without another word. That night, Harris lay awake, his mind restless. He replayed every moment. Lyra's gentle touch, Selene's sharp warning, the coded whispers in the dark. He felt pulled in two directions. Part of him wanted to believe Lyra's kindness was real. Another part of him knew Selene's cold suspicion might be the truth. By dawn, he was more exhausted than when he had gone to bed. The days that followed only deepened the tension. Lyra began to speak more openly, sharing fragments of alien stories. About forests that glowed at night, about oceans that sang like music. Harris found himself listening, almost forgetting to guard himself. Yet at the same time, Selene's silent stares grew heavier, her presence like a shadow always waiting. One afternoon, Harris tested them. He set an old chessboard on the table. "Let's play," he said. Lyra sat down first, smiling. She moved her pieces slowly, asking questions about the rules. She seemed clumsy, almost playful. Selene, however, stood behind her, watching every move with hawk-like focus. When Lyra made a mistake, Selene finally stepped forward. "Wrong," she said, her voice cold. She reached down and moved the piece to a perfect position. Harris studied them both, his suspicion sharpening. Lyra played at being soft, but Selene revealed the sharp mind beneath. Were they acting? Were they playing roles for him? He ended the game early, claiming boredom. But inside, his unease grew heavier. That night, Harris dreamed of the war. Explosions, screaming, the endless void of space. But in the dream, it wasn't alien soldiers he faced. It was Lyra and Selene, standing side by side, their silver eyes glowing, their voices speaking in that coded tongue. He woke in a cold sweat, his pistol already in his hand. The house was silent, but he could feel it, the weight of eyes watching him from the shadows. As he sat in the dark, gripping his weapon, one truth burned in his mind. He was no longer the commander of a battlefield, yet the battlefield had followed him home. And this war was not against fleets or armies. It was against two women who were not what they seemed. Two women who might be his companions, his enemies, or something far more dangerous. Harris stared into the night, his jaw tight. Peace was supposed to be simple, but nothing about this was simple. The night was quiet, too quiet. Commander Harris had lived long enough to know that silence could be a warning. The forest around his house usually echoed with distant calls of animals, rustling leaves, the hum of insects. But tonight there was nothing, not a single sound. Harris sat by the fire cleaning an old pistol, his mind restless. Lyra was in her room, humming softly. Selene sat in the corner, her posture straight, eyes sharp as always. She had not spoken in hours, but Harris felt her presence like a blade in the dark. Then it happened. The first sound was faint, the crunch of boots on gravel outside. Harris froze. His hand gripped the pistol. His soldier's instinct screamed at him. More footsteps followed, careful, measured, surrounding the house. "Get down," Harris whispered. Lyra stepped out of her room, her eyes wide. "What is it?" "Trouble," Harris said flatly. Before she could ask more, the windows exploded inward. Shadows poured through. Armed men in black armor, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. The first soldier raised his rifle. Harris fired before the man could blink. The shot cracked through the silence, and the intruder fell hard to the floor. The room erupted into chaos. Lyra screamed, ducking behind the table. Harris rolled to the side, firing at another attacker. The old instincts came alive inside him. His body moved without thought, every action sharp and precise. But then Celine moved. She didn't reach for a weapon. She was the weapon. With inhuman speed, she struck the nearest soldier. Her hand snapped his weapon in two as if it were glass. She spun, her movements too fast for Harris's eyes to follow, and in seconds, 2 more men fell at her feet. Her face was cold, her eyes merciless. She fought not like a defender, but like an executioner. Harris fired again, dropping another soldier who tried to flank her. He ducked as plasma bolts scorched the walls, the air thick with smoke and heat. Lyra crawled to him, her voice trembling. "Who are they? Why are they here?" Harris pulled her down just as a bolt ripped through the space above her head. "You tell me," he growled. The soldiers pressed harder, shouting in a language Harris didn't recognize. But Celine was already among them. A blur of movement, her strikes breaking bones, her eyes glowing faintly as if some hidden power fueled her. For the first time, Harris wasn't sure if she was saving his life or simply killing because it was natural to her. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. The surviving soldiers retreated into the forest, dragging their wounded. The transport ship that had brought them roared to life, lifting into the night sky before vanishing into the clouds. The house was wrecked, shattered glass, scorched walls, the floor littered with weapons and bodies. Harris stood in the smoke, pistol still raised, his breath heavy. Lyra clung to his arm, trembling. Celine stood in the middle of the room, calm, her hands bloodied, her chest rising and falling slowly. Harris turned to her, his voice hard. "Explain, now." Celine met his eyes without fear. "They were hunters. Not after you. After us," Lyra's voice broke. "They came for me, for us. They always come." Harris's jaw tightened. "What are you two? Why did they send you to me?" Lyra shook her head, tears welling in her silver eyes. "We didn't choose this. We didn't ask to be here." Celine spoke coldly, cutting her off. "We are not gifts. We are property. Escaped property." The words hit Harris like a blow. Property. He had fought against empires that treated lives as tools, weapons, experiments. He had seen soldiers turned into machines, children stolen for war. And now, it was in his own home. Lyra gripped his arm tighter. "Please believe me. We only want freedom." Celine's voice was sharper. "Freedom does not exist. They will keep coming until one of us is dead." The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke that filled the room. Harris's mind raced. He had asked for one alien woman as a retirement gift, hoping for peace, for something human in his final years. Instead, he had been given 2 fugitives. One kind, one merciless, both hunted by something far larger than himself. He lowered his pistol slowly, his voice low. "Then my home is no longer safe, and if they'll come here once, they'll come again." Lyra's tears glistened in the firelight. Celine wiped blood from her hands without a word. Harris looked at them both. In that moment, he understood one thing clearly. This was no retirement. This was a war waiting to begin, and he was standing in the center of it. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing embers, but the house still smelled of smoke and blood. Shattered glass crunched under Harris's boots as he paced the ruined living room. He had seen war zones quieter than this. Lyra sat on the edge of the sofa, her silver eyes wet with tears. Celine stood in the corner, arms crossed, face hard as stone. They had not spoken since the attackers fled. The silence pressed against the walls until Harris broke it. "Enough. No more secrets." His voice was sharp, steady, the same voice that had once commanded entire fleets. He looked at them both in turn. "Who were those men? Why do they want you? Lyra opened her mouth, but Celine's cold voice cut across her. They were trackers. From the Empire. Harris's jaw tightened. Empire? Lyra nodded slowly. Her voice trembled. The Dominion of Orion, they made us. Harris stopped pacing. He stared at her, his stomach sinking. Made you? Celine's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. We are not born. We are constructed. The room seemed to shrink around him. Harris had fought against machines, against bioengineered soldiers, against things designed only for destruction. But sitting across from him were two women who laughed, cried, and looked human, too human. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and pleading. We were created for different purposes. I was the first. The original design. A companion built to live among humans, to learn them. Harris turned to Celine. And you? Celine's jaw tightened. Her words were cold, each one heavy with truth. I am her copy. Her shadow, a weapon. They cloned her form, stripped her softness, sharpened every edge. I was built for war. Lyra lowered her head, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. They kept us together at first. A pair, two halves of one design. But I couldn't live under chains. I escaped. And when I fled, she followed. Harris's eyes narrowed. Not because you wanted freedom? Celine's gaze burned into him. No, because if she died, I died too. The words lingered like a curse. Harris moved closer, his voice low. What do you mean? Lyra raised her head, her eyes shimmering with grief. We are bound, Commander. Our lives are connected. Kill one of us and the other falls. It was their failsafe. So neither of us can truly escape alone. Harris felt a chill crawl down his spine. He looked at the two women, so different in nature yet tied by something deeper than blood. A soldier and a shadow, a creation and its weapon. His mind turned to the attack. The trackers had not come for him. They had come for them. The council must have known. That was why he had been given not one but two, not as a gift, as bait, as a test. Harris clenched his fists. The council sent you here knowing this. They wanted to see what I'd do with you. Lyra's voice cracked. We didn't ask for this. Please, believe me. We only wanted a chance to live. Celine's voice was sharper, colder. Don't waste your pity on us, Commander. We are not human. We were never meant to live freely. But Harris shook his head. His voice was iron. Don't say that. I fought empires that thought men were tools, too. I buried friends who were treated as expendable. You bleed, you feel. That makes you alive. For the first time, Celine's expression flickered just slightly. A shadow of doubt, or perhaps something deeper, passed across her silver eyes. The fire cracked, breaking the silence. Harris finally sat down, his voice calmer but heavy. If you stay here, they'll come again, and they won't stop. So tell me, what do they really want? To kill you? Or take you back? Lyra shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. Both. If they catch us, they'll tear us apart. They'll copy me again, and erase me. And Celine... She stopped, her eyes darting to her twin. Selene finished the sentence. They will reset me. Strip my mind. Make me what they intended. A soldier with no will. The weight of their words settled deep in Harris's chest. He had asked for one alien woman as a gift, hoping for peace in the quiet years of his life. Instead, he had been given two fugitives chained together by fate, hunted by an empire with endless reach. And now, their lives had collided with his. Lyra leaned forward, her voice soft but desperate. You have a choice, Commander. Return us and they will spare you. You can live in peace. Celine's cold eyes locked on him. Or keep us and you will bring war to your door. Harris stared at them both, the firelight flickering across his scarred face. He felt the weight of years of war pressing down on him again, a weight he thought he had left behind. But inside something old and sharp stirred. He had fought all his life for humanity. Now humanity's council had betrayed him, and sitting before him were not enemies but prisoners of the same cruelty he had fought against. His decision was not made aloud, but it was already burning inside him. This was no retirement. This was the beginning of another battle. And this time he wasn't fighting for medals or orders. He was fighting for two lives that had never been given the chance to be free. The house smelled of smoke and iron. Outside, the forest was silent, the stars bright above the black sky. Inside, three figures sat in uneasy stillness. Commander Harris, Lyra, and Celine. The fire had burned low, leaving only faint light on their faces. Harris's hands rested on his knees, but his mind was a storm. He had spent his life following orders, fighting wars for councils and governments. But now there were no orders, only a choice that felt heavier than any battle he had ever fought. Lyra broke the silence first. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. "You don't have to carry this, Commander. If you give us back, they will leave you in peace. You can still have the quiet life you wanted." Celine's reply was sharp, her tone flat and cold. "Or keep us here and the Dominion will burn everything around you to get us back. You know they won't stop." Harris's eyes moved from one woman to the other. Lyra's face was gentle, full of fear and hope. Celine's face was hard, unreadable, but there was something behind her eyes. Something even she might not understand. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Peace. That's all I ever wanted. After 40 years of war, I wanted silence. A home, a place where nothing followed me. Lyra's eyes softened. "Then let us go. Don't let us take that from you." But Harris's voice grew harder. "Silence is not peace. Peace is when no one is hunted. Peace is when no one is chained. And if what you told me is true, then the Dominion doesn't just want you. They want control over life itself." Celine finally spoke again, her tone colder but quieter than before. "You cannot win against them alone." Harris stood, the firelight catching the scars across his face. His hand rested on the pistol at his belt, though he wasn't aiming it at either of them. His voice was steady, commanding. "I fought empires before. I buried armies twice the size of what they'll send. Don't tell me what I can't win." Lyra shook her head, tears glistening in her silver eyes. "But you'll die." "Then I'll die fighting for something that matters," Harris replied. The word struck the room like a hammer. For the first time, Lyra was speechless. Celine stared at him, her sharp mask cracking for only a heartbeat. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then Harris moved toward the shelf. He pulled down a long metal case, its surface covered in dust. When he opened it, the faint glow of old weapons lit the room. Guns, blades, and the armor he had sworn never to wear again. Lyra gasped softly. "You're preparing for war," Harris nodded. "War found me whether I wanted it or not." Celine stepped closer, her eyes fixed on him. For once her voice wasn't sharp but measured. "If you fight with us, you become their enemy. There's no going back." Harris closed the case and looked at her. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of decades of battles. "I was always their enemy. They just forgot it." The words settled deep like a blade driven into stone. Lyra moved closer, her hands trembling. "Then what happens now?" Harris looked at both of them. The gentle one who wanted freedom and the weapon who had been built to kill. Two halves of one design bound by a curse they did not choose. He saw fear in Lyra, fire in Celine, and something rising in himself that he thought had died years ago. "We prepare," he said simply. Celine's silver eyes narrowed. "Prepare for what?" Harris's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "For when they come back." The fire cracked, the night deepened, and the three stood in uneasy alliance. Outside, the forest stirred again, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Lyra reached for his arm once more, her touch gentle. This time Harris did not pull away. Celine watched, silent, but her gaze no longer burned with only suspicion. Something else, something almost like respect, flashed for the briefest second. Then far away, the distant rumble of engines echoed across the night sky. Harris turned toward the sound, his hand tightening on the pistol. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Celine's jaw tightened, her body snapping back into readiness. The faint red glow of ships shimmered on the horizon. "They're already coming," Harris said, his voice calm but cold. And as the engines grew louder, he whispered to himself almost like a vow, "If war is coming, let it come." The screen of the night seemed to darken, the sound of the engines swelling like thunder. To be continued.